This is Creativity Inc., and it's one of my favorite books. It's by Ed Catmull with Amy Wallace. He was the co-founder of Pixar. I actually got to interview him one time. But it has some incredible lessons about trust, candor, working on a team, and my favorite chapter is actually The Hungry Beast and the Ugly Baby. But we'll get to that in a second. So here are 3 things I learned from Creativity Inc. Number 1, you are not your ideas. And that might sound kind of obvious, but so often we have ideas that we're either unsure about or we don't want to share because we're not sure how good they are. But here's the thing, we all have good ideas and bad ideas. And the only way you can get to the best ideas is if you can actually voice and experiment with any idea you might have. And especially if you're in a team environment like corporate job, things like that, it can be really difficult to share an idea, especially when the first thing someone says after you share it is, I don't think that'll work, or we've never done it that way. But the only way you can get to doing better things and great things is to entertain ideas. And the only way people will be free enough to share those ideas if they don't find their worth attached to it. So if you have a bad idea or an idea doesn't work, that doesn't mean you're a bad person or that your next idea is going to be just as bad. So if you want to be comfortable both sharing and maybe executing on your own ideas, we have to learn to separate our own identity and worth from those ideas. And honestly, if you wanted to start a podcast or YouTube channel, one of the things you have to do is experiment. See what works. What do people respond to? And some of those things are not going to work. They're not going to go well. And that's okay. That's not a judgment on you as a person or your identity. It might just have been a bad idea, and that's okay. But number 2, sharing ideas, especially in the workplace, takes 2 things. Trust and candor is a big part of what Ed Catmull talks about, and when you're in a team environment or just trying to work with 1 or 2 people, the only way you can actually share ideas and be honest is when there's trust within the group. But the only way you can build trust is when there's candor, when people speak frankly, speak their mind, and you don't get all that corporate-y speak and corporate jargon that you see made fun of so much on social media. But those 2 things are also intertwined. The only way people feel like they can be candid is if they trust the people around them. And so how do you get this cyclical building of trust with a building of candor? Well, someone has to be brave and actually take the first step. Now, if you're a leader in an organization or you lead a team, you can be that person where you can be candid and trust your team, whether or not you're sure if you can yet. I also get that if you're on a team and you don't feel safe in that workspace, being candid feels dangerous because you might get fired or something bad might happen. But the only way you can progress and do great things, whether it's creative things, productive, new products for a company to develop, there needs to be trust and candor among the team, and those build on each other. And the more people trust each other, the more free they are to share good ideas, and some of them will be great. Also, before I get to number 3, a quick word on ideas. So often we kind of wait for lightning to strike, that one great idea, and then we'll execute on that. But that's not typically how ideas work. It's not like you just get the idea and you're good to go. The process instead is executing on lots of ideas, and eventually you'll see which one has worked. It's typically a retroactive lightning struck when you discover that was a good idea. So don't get analysis paralysis and wait for what you think is the best idea before you do anything, because then you'll often not do anything. Instead, keep experimenting, keep trying new ideas. Many of them won't work, but eventually one will work, and that's the one you can run with, and then you can have more like it that will lead to more success in the future. But number 3, my favorite chapter in this book, it's called The Hungry Beast and the Ugly Baby. It's a weird title, but let me take a second to explain. He's talking about a period in Disney animation studios after they released The Lion King, which was massively successful. They kind of sat on their laurels for a bit. They released a bunch of movies throughout the 90s, but The Lion King was kind of the last great movie until we got to the early 2000s. That also what left a window open for Pixar to start and make incredible movies, and eventually Disney purchased them. But during that time, they were actually feeding the beast. Because The Lion King was so successful, they felt like they had to keep making things at a set pace so they can have merch and movie deals and then add things to the parks, and it becomes this almost locomotive that you just need to keep feeding it content or stuff, and pretty quickly you don't make great things because you're just trying to feed the beast. Also, that beast, or locomotive if you want to think about it, is not very kind to new ideas. New ideas are unproven. We're not sure if they're going to work. They're often like ugly babies. That's his words, not mine. But the only way you'll discover a great new idea is when it has a chance to germinate. Now, you've probably experienced this in workplaces or maybe even your own team when you're doing things, and sometimes it's just you're doing the same things over and over because that's what keeps the company going, that's what helps the bottom line, but nothing is changing, nothing is innovating. It's probably because everyone's feeding the beast and not paying attention to any ugly babies. So look out for those new ideas that might be unproven, but given a chance could be hugely successful. Now, On the other hand, when you have that idea or ugly baby and you give it a chance to succeed, there does need to be a moment where you look at that idea, that process, that new workflow, that new product, and you say, is this actually working? Is this viable? Is this good? And then the baby has to be able to walk on its own. But you can only get those newer ideas to move forward and innovate when you're not just feeding the beast all the time. Now, there are still people that need to feed the beast because the company needs to keep going. The only way you can have a company is if it makes money, but you do need to have new ideas that are innovative for that company to succeed in the future. So those are 3 things I learned from Creativity Inc. And it's honestly one of my favorite books. I gave it to my team. And this, along with the book Never Split the Difference with Chris Voss, really taught me a lot about communication in the workplace. I'm going to talk about the 3 things I learned from that book pretty soon. So subscribe to the channel. Let me know if you have comments or questions or what you liked about Creativity Inc. if you've read it. And this was the very first video on this channel, so thanks for watching. If you subscribe, thanks for that too. And I'm going to be talking about 3 things I learned about family, life, kids, grief, all of that. So hope you'll join me. I'll catch you next time.